And where do we start? With the CSS profile. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize my thumbnail here, Debbie, so that I'm not just looking at myself because it drives me to distraction. So the CSS profile, college scholarship search, what does it mean? It means that about 400, usually private schools, some of what we call the, the state Ivies, like University of Virginia, University of Michigan, William and Mary, those sorts of schools that are state schools, but they still require the CSS profile because they want to take a look at, do a deeper dive into your financials, because oftentimes they're looking at either giving 100% need-based aid or some, and where do they have to kind of look at a lot of different things. How badly do they want your student? How robust is your financial health? How close are you to retirement? How robust is your retirement balances and such? So it can be a great thing, although it's very tedious. I look at the FAFSA as kind of like doing your personal taxes, and the CSS profile is like doing business taxes. And if you are a business owner, this is painful. So I'm nothing but truthful and blunt.
And Luann, I once had a financial aid officer kind of explain this perspective of the CSS profile from, at least from kind of like the college side, just to kind of share this with everybody. And they kind of use this information. They have a certain amount of money, right? That their own institutional money that they're figuring out how to award. And so they use the information from the CSS profile really in some way to get a measure of, a family's capability to pay for college, and then kind of how that family, it's not formal, it's not a formal ranking, but kind of how that family compares to other families in terms of how they can afford. So we don't love this, but I'm just kind of giving you a little philosophy behind why it's used.
Yep. You're exactly spot on. And, it's their way of just getting a better picture of, is this going to be a good fit school financially for this student? Are they going to be able to stay here for the next, 4 years? So, oftentimes parents have the emotional part of it. Oh, geez, this is our son or daughter's dream school, and we're just going to have to figure out how to make it. And then maybe 2 years later, they can no longer continue. So, in a case with the CSS profile, they're taking that into consideration too, to see, is this a family that's going to be able to continue to stay here if we can't give them the kind of aid or that they're going to need. So you're going to, the CSS profile is on your student's College Board account. So you go ahead and log into their College Board account, and you're going to sign in on the, fall 2021. So when do we complete this? It opened up a little bit earlier than October 1st this year. But the thing is, it's not really like the FAFSA. As you can see here, it says you should submit no later than 2 weeks before the earliest priority filing date specified by your colleges. And all the colleges on your list are going to have a different date. So you want to look at whichever one is the earliest and get them all submitted. So this is just an example. This is UVA, University of Virginia. And so it's showing here, submit the FAFSA and profile for early decision by November 15th, priority date, December 1st, priority date, early action, and February 1st, priority date for regular decision. Then it goes on to tell you, as far as, other information that we're going to be touching on as far as the IDOC and such. And that's how you send the information that they request to the college. So it's critical that you look at that priority date and get it in at least a week before. If you're going to look for any kind of merit awards, because if it's not in by the priority date, you can get it in later, but in many cases, you're not going to be considered for merit scholarships and or other need-based aid.
And Luann, is there sometimes a different priority deadline if the student is for financial aid forms, if the student is applying early decision versus regular decision?
That's what I just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear about early decision. That's all. I'm sorry. I wasn't.
So early decision in this case is November 15th for UVA. Now, it could be a different date for Stanford.
Right. Right. That's all I'm saying. It varies. It might vary school to school.
Right. And, some schools are not, they might give you a couple of months after their early action or early decision deadlines to get the financial documents in. So every school is going to be different. So it's not a free form. If you submit to one school, it's going to be $25. Each additional school is going to be $16. So watch your students' list. If they start putting 10 or more schools on that list that are all CSS Profile schools, those fees can start to add up. And yes, there is an occasional fee waiver. So if you were able to get a SAT fee waiver, you should be able to receive a CSS Profile waiver, and it would just be in the application. You'd have to reach out to, excuse me, College Board to see about the fee waiver.
So Luann, can I just ask, and you might be going over, but I know there's going to be a lot of questions about, do you have to fill out the CSS profile just if you want your child to be considered for merit scholarships? And because somebody's asking that, and I got a lot of questions related to it. So I don't know if you have it here or if you, we can talk about it now.
If the school requires a CSS profile, you fill it out. Whether you're applying for a merit scholarship, if you're following merit or need-based aid, it doesn't matter. You can go to the College Board and look for the list of schools that accept this, or that require, I should say, the CSS profile. You can have a $200,000 household income and still be able to get some grant money from CSS profile schools. So there is no reason not to complete this. If the school requires it, complete it, unless you are willing to pay full price.
Well, that's the other thing. Somebody did say they know they're not going to get need-based aids, and the school doesn't give merit aid. So in that case, that if you already know you're not going to get any aid and you are prepared to pay the sticker price and the school doesn't give merit money, then you probably don't have to fill out the CSS profile.
Yeah, I mean, if you earn 350 plus and it's your only child, even, and you're going to go to Boston College, $78,000 this year. If you want to pay full price, then don't complete the FAFSA or the CSS profile. If you're earning $200,000 and looking at Boston College as an example, I would encourage you.
Because there's a possibility you might get something. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and one last thing.
It's not the FAFSA.
Right. If your school, there's a question here, I just want to if anybody's in the situation, if your school does not require the CSS profile, there's no reason for you to be filling it out. So if that's the case, because somebody asked, the schools don't require it, then you can say goodnight and we'll see you on a different webinar.
It's, if it doesn't require it, then you're filling it out for nothing because it's
Right.
not going to go anyplace.
Right, right.
Okay. So I know that there's always questions about, well, we're a divorced family, we're a blended family. So please, if that's the case, pay attention right now. You will log in, your student is going to log into the CSS profile. In a couple of minutes, I'll show you the screen. But most all of the CSS profile schools require a non-custodial parent to create and submit a CSS profile. It's going to be a completely separate account. That non-custodial parent is going to get an email once their son or daughter completes their CSS profile. They're going to get an email with a request to go in and create their own account as an adult. This doesn't mean that all the parents, the other parents that are, not divorced and such, if you have never been divorced or you're a single parent, and you're just going to be on the same CSS profile account as your student. This is only if it's requiring a non-custodial parent account. You're going to create the profile, go to the cssprofile.org, sign in, create an account, and create your account using your parent information, not the student's information, to create the account. Then once you get in there, it's going to ask for the student's information and the parent's information. If you don't give your student your login and password, then your ex will never see your information. So that's always been a big issue, that, I don't want my ex to know how much I'm making or how much we have in savings with my new, my new spouse. So this way it keeps private. Even your student does not get to see the non-custodial information. So I cannot stress that enough. And if you know that your non-custodial parent is going to refuse to cooperate with this, then you need to explain that in the special circumstances that we'll get to at the end of the application.
Luann, what you just asked or said, what about, how does that relate to parents that are separated?
Same thing. If they're not living together and they're separated, they're not living in the same household, they're either separated or they're divorced. So no different than the FAFSA. If they're separated, living in a different domicile, and the student is living with, whichever family over 51%, whichever parent, it's going to be the same parent who they filed the FAFSA application with. Then that non-custodial parent will have to create a CSS profile of their own and submit their information. Does that cover that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what information do you need? Pretty much everything financial, and to include all of the same financial information that you had on the FAFSA, and then some. You're going to want all of your qualified retirement statements, all of your business information. even if you have a 100% family-owned business, you still have to report the assets and the value of your business, as well as the equity in your primary residence. So the only thing that you will not need to disclose as far as an asset is concerned for the CSS profile is cash value inside life insurance contracts. You know, all of the other things that were not assessed on the FAFSA, retirement balances, the equity in your primary residence, cash value life insurance, annuities, and family-owned business assets. The only thing that you have to get all of that information except the cash value in your life insurance contracts. To include, savings bonds and stock accounts, 529 accounts, as well as the current balance, the current refund balance of any prepaid tuition programs as well. So the next few screens that are talking about the student's information, if you see on any screens where there's that little red asterisk, it means you have to fill that in or you cannot proceed. So let's just say that you kind of get stuck someplace and you have to log out. You have to create the next, I'll tell you where it's going to stop, which are the screens that are about the student and their dependency or independent. And once that has been, those screens have been completed, then that information has saved. You can go forward, then you can go ahead and log out, log back in, and all of your information will have been there. So the one thing I wanted to point out on this screen is if you see where the student's CB FinAid ID, if you don't have it because you haven't yet created the College Board account for the CSS profile, so that's why there's not a red asterisk there. But let's just say that you've created your CSS profile, you've submitted it, you've got your College Board ID, and you're going to go back in and add a new, a new school or two. You can go ahead and put your FinAid ID in that spot. But it's not required, but that's why it's there. So the next, information, make sure that your student's email address is not their high school email address. And you have got to start making sure that your kids start checking their emails. This is all the student, dependency questions, and then parent relationships. So parent 1, parent 2, keep it the same as parent 1 and parent 2 as you filed in the FAFSA so that everything stays consistent. If you've had a parent has died, they still want that parent's information, and you'll just check deceased, whether they died this year or 10 years ago. I had a family last year. Dad died when the son was 3 months old. We still had to put him down as parent number 2. Now, this is let me go back. You see where it shows in the left-hand corner, add another parent, if there are step parents. So you want to put this as, father, stepmother, mother, stepfather, however you want to put it. But all of the parents, biological, adoptive, step parents, and or legal guardians need to be listed on this form. This is where, it will know that there is going to be a non-custodial form that needs to go out. So what's the marital status of their parents? If you select divorced, separated, or never married, you will report only one parent's information on this application and may be required to complete a separate application for your other parent. So there's the answer to that question that was asked just a short time ago.
And Luann, just to clarify, somebody's saying, as long as the parents are married, we don't create, they're basically, they think that just because parents are married that they can go in under their student's ID, but they still need to create a separate parent.
No, 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 no. If, if there's a student with mom and dad who have not been divorced, haven't remarried, you know, it's just a everyday family, there's only this one account, this CSS profile that is listed. You log in with the student's College Board account. If there is a step parent, a divorce, nobody's remarried, but the mom or dad are not the custodial parent because the student lives with the other parent for more than 51% of the year, they will get an email invitation. If the school requires a non-custodial application, they will get an email from College Board to register a College Board account in their name, their username and their password, so that they're now they're going to put their students' information and their information, and so it will be linked to the student.
Okay.
Clear or clear as mud.
I think
We'll just go on,
Yeah.
and if I need to repeat it at the end, it's very important. So, but you know, if it's just mom and dad and the student, you just log in under the student's College Board account. If there's a non-custodial parent that's in the picture, then they will have to create their own College Board account so that it can be connected to the student. But the other family is not going to see any of their financial information. It just goes to the school. So high school information, you know, do a high school search, but you notice here, they want to know if your child attended a private high school and maybe got some sort of scholarships or grants, which happens a lot with private high schools. So they want to know, you know, what did you receive, and how much did you pay for that private school education just for that student, your student that is applying to college. You know, you want to make sure that you're selecting the right high school. And here we are to the college program selection. So you're going to click on the college program selection, and it's going to bring you up to the college search. So the search by is going to give you a couple of different options. You can search by the college name, you can search by the state, I believe, and you can search by the CSS code number of the school. If, when in doubt, search by the school's name, the information is going to come up like you see on the screen, and then you're going to choose the school. So I put in Rochester Institute of Technology, and then I hit search. And as you can see, we brought any school with the name Institute or Technology are going to come up because Rochester Institute of Technology does not require the CSS profile. So That's a way for you to, just confirm. Because sometimes, if you didn't check on the, if you didn't check on the school's website and you looked on the CSS profile list on College Board, I have found mistakes on that list over the years.
I found them this year. So I would tell you that even this year, the list that College Board has of the schools that they claim need CSS profile, I mean, most of them are on. What you're going to find is that they've missed some schools.
Correct. Well, I found 5 years in a row, and I kept calling 5 years in a row to say a certain school that was on the list does not require the CSS profile, and it took them 5 years to take the name of that school off their list. So you've got to be a bit proactive. This is super important. So now we went ahead and found, so I put in University of Virginia, and once again, it's going to bring up the same name. So we've got University of Virginia and Virginia Commonwealth School of Medicine. Well, shoot, I know that that's not right. So you want to make sure that you've checked the right school. And down below, you see add to CSS profile. And if you've got more schools, it's going to take you back to the same search list until you've put all of your schools on the list. So here we are that we've got 3 schools, Stanford, USC, and UVA. Notice that they all have their CSS code. I always write down that code and put it in a sticky note in all of my client file folders. I suggest that you do the same because you're going to be following through with these code numbers with a lot of information even after you've filed. So it saves you from searching and getting schools mixed up. If you remember, some of these questions were on different screens in the FAFSA. It all comes in together. So whether they're, most of you are going to be a first-year undergraduate, never previously attended, living on campus, and whether it's regular decision, early action, early decision. If you're going to be, going to a school that's close by, it'll ask, on campus, off campus with parents. We'll go into the parent details. And so your name is going to be here. Provide the following for whoever is parent 1. So the same thing with you. Use an email address that that you're going to have for at least, the next 4 years. Highest level of education completed, same thing as on the FAFSA, but now they're asking about employment. So you want to see, you'll check mark if you're employed by others, it's going to bring up, not only what is your occupation or profession, but the name of your employer, what type of business is it, and how many years have you been at this current place of employment. Now, if you've just gotten a new job and you've only been there a month, then you're going to put, a month. So, it's not going to be detrimental in any way. They just want to know the information. And dislocated worker. Some people have, they don't really know what that is. Right now, there's a lot of dislocated workers out there, people that have, they're on unemployment for months because of COVID, or they've lost their jobs with no opportunity to go back into that field and on unemployment, may even furloughed with no date in sight. So this is going to be more than ever, this question is going to be a yes in any time than in the past that I've seen. Once again, we're still in the first parent. So it's going to, you're going to break down each parent's retirement accounts. So you just look at it. Do I have an IRA, a 401k, other tax deferred retirement plan? Are you going to draw on on Social Security upon retirement? I would hope so. So check it along with whatever other accounts that you have, and then you're going to put the current value of tax deferred and after tax retirement. So if you remember, you didn't have to disclose your Roth IRAs or your Roth 401ks. You will disclose that here. So it's all balances of your qualified retirement accounts. You know, tax return, not only for, you know, and once again, we're in 2019. And then what are the schedules? So make sure that you have your complete tax return with you and indicate if you've got a schedule 1, 2, 3, any foreign earned income or additional Medicare tax on those forms. And now here's the fun part, which I actually like this rather than the FAFSA, because it just is telling you which line that you're going to get that information from. And so you just take your tax return and go line by line by line. If you don't have, you see that there's no red asterisk in all of the, most of those boxes. So if you don't have any taxable interest in line 2B, you don't have to put a 0 there. But let's say line 8B, adjusted gross income. If you had a 0, you would have to put a figure in there. So you would put a 0. So, you know, just follow line by line by line, and it's super simple. Now, parents' income and benefits. So how much did, you know, the name of the parent earn from work in 2019 and the second parent? You know, parents' contributions to tax deferred pension and retirement plans. You know, do you have an FSA, flexible spending account? Do you have an FSA separate for dependent care expenses? And do you have an HSA? Those are all tax deferred accounts that you have to log in separately in addition to the contribution that you made in 2019 to your qualified retirement account. This one here, you see how on the right, other untaxed income, include and not to include. It specifies exactly what you need to include and what you do not. And just go line by line. And when you put your cursor in the box, your explanation box, if there is an explanation, is going to show up on the right-hand side. Now, notice the first one, Social Security benefits received for all family members except any who are going to be enrolled in college in 2021 that were not reported on a tax return. You've got to read these questions. Alimony received, income from other members of their household, housing and food allowances, money given to them or paid on their behalf, and other untaxed income. You'll click in each box and it will tell you exactly what they're talking about. So this is very different from the FAFSA because look, it's asking about 2020 as well. So what do you expect to have earned in 2020? So luckily, we're in October, and, just look at your most recent pay statement or LES if you're in the military, or, whatever, your unemployment benefits, and put what you've earned this year and just kind of guesstimate, is this going to continue for the next couple of months? It doesn't have to be accurate because we haven't finished 2020 as yet. This is the only place where it's not to be accurate. 2019, absolutely accurate. Whatever is on your W-2s, your 1099s, 1098s, your tax return, your statements, accurate to the penny. But when we're talking about in the future, you can guesstimate to a degree. Don't way understate, because they're going to see it anyways in 2020. Other taxable income and untaxed income and benefits. So here's a new question this year. Have your parents' 2020 income been significantly impacted due to COVID-19? Now, if you got fired because you got fired and it had nothing to do with COVID, that's not significantly impacted. But if you lost your job, you had extensive medical expenses because of COVID, there's going to be, you can explain the other things in the special circumstances, but this is just specific to COVID. Now, do you expect a significant income change in 2021 due to a new job, a job loss? Are you going to be retiring? Are your benefits going to be changing, etc.? So, they're wanting to know is what you're expecting, is that going to be consistent, or are you expecting some financial changes, good or bad? And if you have received any of these federal benefits, just answer it yes or check mark it if you have. Child support. So don't get these two confused. If you've paid it or if you've received it. It's going to be a yes or no. And if it is yes, they're going to ask you, how much did you either pay or receive? Now, the housing details. This is for your your primary residence. So you're only going to include your principal and interest only. If it doesn't show that on your mortgage statement, call your mortgage lender and have them break out what your principal and interest payment is, minus your escrow, insurance premiums, property taxes, and if you've got HOA fees. You want to look at what year did you purchase your home, what was the purchase price, the current market value, and the total amount that is owed on your home. So if you have a first and second mortgage on your home, that's what you're going to put in that box. If that's the case, you're only going to include your primary mortgage amount in the last section. If you only have a primary mortgage, you don't have to repeat that figure. If you're renting, you enter your rent payment where it says housing payment. So, this is completely different from the FAFSA. Okay, parent assets, excuse me, and investments and assets they own but are held in the names of their children. Please read this. So an asset owned by a sibling in his or her name should not be reported on this screen. So a checking or savings account owned by, sisters and brothers do not go on this screen. But if they have a trust account, yes, that is going to be counted under assets. I'm sorry, under investments. The parents' current amount in cash, savings, and checking accounts. Do not enter average balances. Look at the balance the day that you're going to file your CSS, and if you're going to do your FAFSA at the same time, just get a screenshot of your balances or print off, if you can, what the current statement is, just in case they end up, red flagged for some reason. You're good. You've got your documentation. And then current market value of investments. And once again, it will click on, when you click on it, it will tell you, which investments. These investments are not your qualified retirement accounts because you already added that on the screen where it asked about, each parent, your 401ks, 403bs, and so on. So this is only for, your brokerage account, money markets, CDs. This is where your students' 529 plans are going to be covered under current market value of investments. And yes, you do need to include, if you've got 4 kids and they each have you've got earmarked for each of them 529 plans. It doesn't matter who you've got them earmarked for. It's a parent asset, and all of them need to be disclosed. And yep, I forgot that I did this slide. So this is the breakdown of what the investments include. And once again, this is a good one. If an asset is owned jointly with someone else, you only enter your portion of the value. Usually that ends up in real estate, but there are other types of investments that maybe you've got a co-owner with, and just your family's value. Parent other real estate. I check all of the boxes so that you could just see, if once you check it, what else is going to come up. So if you've got rental real estate, how many properties do you have? And I'm going to tell you, if you've just got like 1 rental property, that does not count as a business asset. Even 2, if you are not providing, services like linens and cleaning and that sort of thing, it's not going to count as a business. But if you've got 5 or more properties listed under, an LLC or an S Corp or whatever, you're receiving rent, you're in charge of repairs and whatnot, those are considered business assets. And rent out a portion of their primary home. A lot of people are renting out rooms or, a suite in their home as Airbnb. That's where a lot of that is coming from. So parents, business, and farm. Where the FAFSA said you didn't have to disclose, the assets of your family-owned business, this is where you're going to have to disclose it, whether it's a family owned or whether you have partners, and how many businesses that you have, and so on. And the farm is, if you've got a working farm, and you didn't have to disclose that on the FAFSA, you're going to have to disclose this whether you're living on the farm or not. Now, if you've had really high medical expenses or dental expenses that weren't covered by insurance, and I'm talking, over $5,000. If it's under that, then they're probably not going to take that into consideration. And also, if you are paying on either still paying on your own college loans or older children or such, in 2019, whatever you paid, and the same in 2020. The thing about 2020 is nobody has really had to make a payment since the middle of March until the end of December, but there are those that have been continuing to make their payments because they could afford to. The interest hasn't been accruing. So once the interest starts accruing in January, they've been able to pay off quite a chunk, maybe during March to December, and that's going to reduce the principal amount so that, there's not as much interest that's going to start accruing again. So if that was the case, whatever payments that you made in 2020, you will include that, and if you've paid alimony. So the dependent summary, this is for other, other children in the family. And it's just super simple, just add another dependent until, the most I've ever seen is 10 kids. So, but pretty simple. The student's tax return, if they didn't file a tax return, it's not required. If they still worked and received a W-2 or earnings from a work study program, co-op, these are for usually older kids, and that's a good segue. So for a vast majority of the schools, you're only going to file the CSS profile the first year. And then after that, most of the schools don't require you to do it, but you want to check to see if they're going to continue to require you to complete the CSS profile. So that's where those questions are coming from, so that you can see, well, heck, we're just we haven't even started college yet, and they're asking about co-op and work study. That's for those schools that require the CSS every year, just like the FAFSA. This is a tricky one that really messes people up. Well, how can we figure out what their expected earnings are going to be? You just you have to guesstimate it. If your student worked this summer, then, just put down, are they going to come home the following summer and work at their same job? Most of the students that I've worked with over the years, they come back and they go right into their jobs that they had prior to heading off to college. So you just look at, your situation. If your student hasn't worked, and they're not going to work, you can put 0. But I will tell you that the CSS profile schools expect, when they calculate that institutional aid, the institutional methodology, they're expecting that the student is going to be paying at a minimum $2,500 toward, from their balance side of the balance sheet, to pay towards college. So you want to make sure that, some of these are for during the summer, during the school year, for 2021, and uh, untaxed income, untaxed income and benefits in the summer and the school year. So just take your time and watch the directions. Student resources. This is another one. How much do you think you're going to be paying for educational expenses for your student? Just be honest. If you've calculated that, you know what, we're going to spend $25,000 out of our income over the year, then put that figure. If it's $5,000, if it's zero, whatever. This does not include the amounts that you're going to borrow. This is just from your current income figure. Now, the scholarships and grants from sources other than colleges, this is only guaranteed. So, I've got a number of students that have been applying to colleges, are applying for scholarships, third-party scholarships, since they were in the 8th grade. And some of them have, got, some scholarships that are sitting over here just waiting for them to go to college. So we already know, okay, that's guaranteed. But if your student is, they've submitted some scholarship essays and they're just waiting to hear, then you don't put, whatever that scholarship award was, $1,000 or, $500 or such. Same thing with employer tuition benefits, and relatives other than their parents. If you're waiting for the graduation gifts and such, you don't put that down. But let's just say that your parents have indicated they've got $20,000 in an account for your student. It's not a 529 plan. It's just, this is what we're going to hand over to them. Then include that, because it's going to show up as a gift anyways. So you might as well put it on there. If you have no clue what they're going to give, then you can put 0. So student assets. So this is, once again, you have to pay attention to whether it's a parent or a student screen. Let me go back here, sorry. Their investments. So a lot of times, most kids don't have much in the way of investments, but some do. They might have been dabbling with some mutual funds that you started them with. If it's in their name, it's a student asset. This is where uniform gift to minors and uniform trust to minors show up. Those are student assets. So your CPA set that up so it might have given you a tax break, but now it's going to come back to bite you for financial aid. It's too late to do anything about it. But read the list. I mean, it's going to go into non-qualified, non-retirement annuities, which I've never come across a student that's had that, but you never know. Commodities, precious metals. So, if you've got some, gold and silver that's sitting over in a safe deposit box that you plan on cashing out to pay for their education, then you need to disclose those. Go online and find out what the actual current value is of that. So the special circumstances, this is getting to the end of the application. And so I clicked on change in employment and COVID. And so it opens up, you could, let's just say that you didn't have anything that happened over COVID, but change in employment or any of the other screens that you check mark, it's going to open up the explanation and a text box. You can provide up to 2,000 characters of an explanation of financial circumstances, whether it's maybe you are taking care of elderly parents or supporting. I know there's a lot of people that their parents are living overseas and families are overseas and they're sending money overseas. So if you can document what you've sent, then that's okay. That you're supporting a family back in, El Salvador or in Italy or wherever. But if you can't document those expenses, you haven't kept track of it, you don't have receipts of checks or whatever, then don't put it on there, because they're going to come back and ask for documentation. Don't get into drama. Be very realistic and down to earth, and just, okay, this is what happened. Not, well, my sister and my brother had a big fight with my mother and we were supposed to get money. It doesn't, don't get into that. But just let them know what's going on with your family, the extenuating circumstances, and you would be surprised. So those of you that were on the FAFSA presentation, if you remember my client, Bruce, this is where we went in and crafted a special circumstances in the CSS profile, in addition to the special circumstances form, and got them, just really were able to knock down how much that they were going to pay out of pocket. If he hadn't have done that, he would have ended up paying, an additional $132,000 over the course of the next 4 years, just from not knowing any different. Now, when you get to the spot where you have that special circumstances, then it doesn't stop there. There may be some supplemental questions from the colleges that are on your list. So in this instance, Stanford, they want to know what the student's major is and what is their career objective. So are they, want to be, a mechanical engineer, and they're going to study mechanical engineering. It's some schools, it gets ridiculous. They want to know the registration number on your vehicles. They're really, really doing a deep dive to find out, a lot of financial information about you. And you've got to complete the information. So you're going to see a submit once you get to after the supplemental questions. And if this screen comes up, it's going to list all these, if you haven't completed the complete application, it's not going to submit. It won't allow you to. Now, the reason we have all of these listed is because once you're in the application, instead of going through the individual screens, there's a agenda list on the left-hand side, and you can just kind of click on each of those to go into those different areas, which is what I did here. So, but you have to have everything complete before you can submit. Now, before we get to this IDOC, and I couldn't show you the next steps because I didn't complete this. There is no PDF with the CSS profile where you can show, an example. They don't give you a, hey, can I get a printout and have work on this on paper? They just don't do that. So once you have completed all of your information, it's going to take you over to the screen where they're going to want your credit card information so that you'll go ahead and pay the fees. It'll have the fees added up, and you just, make sure your credit card information is in there, and click, 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 and away you go. You've submitted. So at that point, once you've submitted, you cannot go in and change anything on your CSS profile. So you can't go in and make corrections like you can do on the FAFSA. So you want to make sure that everything is correct. I end up going over this document probably 3 or 4 times, and before I'm finally satisfied to hit a final submit. And then the last time, of course, I'm going over with the parents to make sure that, we've got 3 sets of eyes usually, or 2 sets of eyes to go over it. Once you have gotten to that point, you've hit submit. You're going to log out, and then it might take about 5 to 7 days or so for all of this, for the College Board to send the information to the colleges. You can go ahead and log back in to the College Board, and there's going to be directions. So let's just say that you, before we got to that, you got halfway through the application. You had to close the application because you had to go pick the kids up or something. And now you're going to come back to it. You're going to log back in. It would have saved your information that you had input by that point, as long as you finish those first 4 screens. And this is what you're going to see. Status is in progress. You can click on continue application. But now you're going to see that the schools that you have on your list so far, look, they've got a priority filing date with a question mark. Click on that question mark, because you want to make sure that the information pertains to you. Priority filing date information, click for details. That's what I clicked to get that one page that I showed you about UVA with the early decision, early action, and regular decision deadlines. Now, the student portal with a question mark. There may be that your school has accepted your application and emailed to your student their student portal information. And this is whether it's a CSS Profile school or just a FAFSA school. When the schools receive your students' applications, they're going to send an email out, congratulations, we've received your application. Log in to and create your student portal. It's not only for the schools that you don't wait to do that because you haven't accepted yet. You're going to get information into that student portal to schools that you haven't decided on yet for documents that they're waiting on to send you a financial aid award, a scholarship, merit scholarship award, or an invite to apply to honors college application with a deadline and such. I can't stress enough how emails have got to be monitored so much, and these emails are going to your student. They do not go to you. So going to the next one, once you have submitted, the schools have received your information, are they going to use the IDOC? And so the IDOC is the Institutional Documentation Service. This is another, this is the College Board, which is why they charge the fees, because you're going to upload your whatever documentation that the colleges are asking for into the IDOC to get sent to the schools. So they're going to give you a registration to and a ID to log into the excuse me, the student's IDOC. You can either put in their College Board financial aid ID and date of birth or social security number. You've got to have 2 out of the 3 pieces of information. And then it's going to, you can see, all right, it's got the student's information, the parents, the primary parent household. If there is no non-custodial parent household, then that additional household area is not going to show up on your IDOC family information page. That's only going to be there if there is a non-custodial parent. So just make sure that all of the information, once again, is correct. And then it's going to take you to the area that is going to be a list of what does the school require. It's going to be tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, business information, verification statements, and it's, if you look over under the owner column, it indicates for custodial parent, sometimes it's going to say parent 1, parent 2, student, you've got to pay attention to it. Over on the right, it's telling you which schools are requesting that information. So in this example, there's 2 schools there, and it's showing, what is it? The 5024 College of Sample is only asking for the business farm supplement, not the Sample University. Sample University is asking for a verification statement for the dependent student, but the College of Sample is not. So if you've got, 4 or 5 different colleges there, they're all going to have their own different requirements. So let's just say, as an example, the federal tax return. Read the directions. Click here if you did not and do not expect to submit a tax return for this year. And of course, it's going to say 2019. But let's say that there's 4 different schools on there. It's going to automatically submit to those 4 separate schools for you. So you only have to upload it the one time. Now, as far as your tax return is concerned, and I know most of us, we file electronically, our CPA, or accountant does your tax return. They send it to you electronically. We're not physically signing anymore. Well, you have to sign for the college before you upload your tax return. So you're going to have to print out your tax return, sign and date it. So sign and date it, the date that you received it from your CPA, or that you filed it with TurboTax, whatever. And then you're going to have to scan it back and save it as an attachment to upload into the IDOC system. Now, I will warn you, they want everything neat and clean, and they want it legible, and they don't want it skewed. It needs to be straight. So you've got to be very careful on how you upload your information before sending it over, because if it's not straight, you're going to get a notice that it was rejected. I've had that happen. So you've got to, once again, just follow the directions to the T. And in the tutorials, they'll show you samples of what they will accept and what they won't accept. Now, the IDOC is not the only way that you have to submit information to the schools. And here's, once again, once you get past that list, they're going to walk you through everything that, step by step, what you need to do. And before I forget, let's go back to that screen. Here it's the first one, 2016 federal tax return for the custodial parent. So if you're, filing married joint, you're just gonna, upload one tax return. But you've got also 2016 federal tax return for the student. You are uploading each request separately. So if they're asking for W-2 forms for the parent, and some of them might say parent 1 and parent 2, if that's the case, you upload them into a separate document. If they don't, like in this one here, it says 2016 W-2 form for custodial parent, and there's, 2 parents, that's okay to go ahead and put both W-2s or 1099s together. But if they indicate separately, you follow the directions. And you don't send any of your tax worksheets, but you do send your complete tax file, your first 2 pages and any of your schedules. So then it's going to, walk you through, okay, provide a name for each person who you're submitting documents for, and so on. Now, if the file gets too big, because you've doubled things up, it's going to come up and say, too big to send, and then you have to break it up and then resubmit again. I don't have a screen that shows this, but some schools will show up. Let me go back here. So some schools will show up on here, and they might not ask you to submit. They don't use the IDOC system. They have their own system, whether it's going to be scanning and emailing or faxing or occasionally mailing. And for those schools, usually it's kind of the smaller private schools. They may request that you put the student's ID number, their school ID number, on each page that you're submitting, which is just crazy. So just make sure that you have a clean copy of the tax return and the W-2s and such that you can upload to the schools that are using IDOC and that don't require a school ID and or date of birth. No longer are they asking, do you have to require to put the student's social security number on there? They usually use the student's ID that has been given to them, that was emailed to them for their student portal, and or put their date of birth on there.